Recruiter's card. I'm like,
Mr. Hidalgo, we are live.
okay.
We're live.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We're live. And so today is Thursday, July 14th, 2022, 7 p.m. I'd like to bring to order the Finance Committee meeting, Council Rock School District, starting with a roll call to my right, please.
Matt Frederickson, IT Director.
Ed Salomon, School Board.
Mike Thornburg, School Board. Bob Dickey, School Board. Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Ed Tate, School Board.
Mary Ann McKee, School Board.
Doug Taylor, Joey Engineering.
Andy Sanko, Superintendent.
Joe Hidalgo, School Board, and I don't know if we would mention anybody in the public or not. Okay. There's two items on the agenda for tonight. Should be a rather a good meeting here. So I want to start with number A. I think Dr. Sanko, you're going to take this one up.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Hidalgo. So we were notified that the IRS increased their standard mileage rate. It's up 4 cents from where it was 58.5 cents. It is now 62.5 cents, 62.5 cents per mile. That's the reimbursement rate. People within the district, when they travel, they get reimbursed. It's really more informational than anything. That's outside of us. That's the number we're given. Any questions on that mileage?
I'm going to share that with my boss.
Right?
So, good evening. I'm here to touch base on the RFP process. As you're aware, we started this back in May, June, received numbers and shared the numbers with the board and the scoring matrix and some other things, and with the district. And at the end of the day, I think there were about 6 firms that were considered for interviews, and of those 4 were interviewed. So tonight, we'd like to talk about those numbers and see where you guys want to land. The challenge with this is the schedule, and that we need board approval on the 21st because, as you know, ABM's agreement is over on midnight on August 31st. So September 1st, we're going to need a custodial team here to keep the buildings clean and ready for outside users.
Doug, excuse me.
Yep.
May I ask, I know Ms. Law, I don't know this gentleman over here.
My name is Chris Jones. I'm with ATS Facilities. We're one of the companies that bid on the
Okay.
so that's I'm here just listening.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Welcome.
So we did have a very competitive process. We had 10 firms that we had at our mandatory pre-proposal meeting, and of those, 9 submitted numbers. So we had a very competitive process. They were reviewed and scored on a matrix that you guys have a copy of, and it wasn't based solely on hours or cost or hours. It was a whole series of considerations when looking at who the best firm is for the district. And then we had numbers that we gave you that broke down each company, their hours, their FTEs, their hourly rates, their and so forth. So after that, we did contact the references initially because we wanted to get the feedback from the district before we started reaching out to different firms and talking to them. But as I said, overall professional fees, full-time equivalents, the hourly rates for each of the 3 years, logistics of the headquarters and the supporting branches were considered, the proposed personnel, the school experience, and ability to staff and maintain the staff throughout the duration of the agreement, which is very important. So of the groups, we brought ABM, Aramark, KBS, and MFM in. We had a good, very strong interview team led by Dr. Sanko. We had Nicole Crawford, Al Fontan, Pro, Pauline, Bob Reinhardt, and myself were there. It was a good day. Lasted a while. We had 4 good interviews. So the interview process, really, we talked about the need to get somebody on board. We'll work with Eastburn and Ray ultimately when we decide who it is to get this contract finalized. So hopefully the 21st, there's a recommendation and there's an approval. the agreement. I think it'll need to be contingent upon solicitor review, because a lot of times that document does go back and forth before it's finalized. And it's really important that we overlap with ABM, unless ABM stays, but the overlap is very important because this new firm is going to need those 30 to 40 days to onboard staff. You can imagine they're coming on board and they're not going to have 77 people to put in the district. So if they were to hire 77 people in 30 days, that would be pretty impressive. So they're really looking to bring in as many of the existing staff that are here that we're fond of. If there's any issues with anyone, they would certainly ask us, and they would consider that when they're interviewing the group of people that are here. But, you know, the district has had good success with the staff that's here. So that is something they'll need to do in those 40 days. So we did interview those 4 firms, as I said, the discussions we're talking about. One of the things that happened during this process that you were all fully aware of is we learned that ABM did in fact enter into a recognition agreement with the union, with 32 BJ in the city. By doing so, their wage rates are union wage rates, but the other 3 firms that were interviewed did not have those union rates in their initial proposals. So we went back and said, hey, we need to know what your costs will be with those union rates. They did provide those. The other thing that was done today was year 1 for each of the other guys. For KBS and MFM was prorated because ABM is here through August 31st, and their services start in July. Because we're paying ABM from the old contract through the end of August, it's not an equal apples-to-apples comparison versus these guys that had 12 months in their proposal. So we asked them to prorate July and August, knowing that all they're doing in July and August is onboarding staff. They're not going to be bringing people in. They're not going to be cleaning. So it really needs to be considered. So they did go back and they reduced their first year number based upon that prorated look. But it was really 10 months, not 12 months for the first year. So that then made all the proposals apples to apples in terms of reviewing them. These are the numbers that I put together, but I think it's most important. Today, Bob Reinhardt and I worked together along with Dr. Sanko just to kind of tweak the numbers and see where everything is. So when you look at year 1, the footnote says bid is for service to be rendered from September through June for the first year. ABM will be compensated based on former contract from July 1 to August 31st. So they had 133 hours in compared to 159 for the other 2 years. That's how we recognized that there was, you know, something different from the other. So we know the FTEs are 76.5 for each of the 3 years, 77 and 85. And at the end of the day, we're looking at 13.5 over the 3 years for ABM, almost 17.9 for KBS, and for MFM about 17.7 for those 3 years. So the next exercise, and this is the last exercise that was done on this, was, hey, what does that mean for the first year of this agreement? Because we do have a budget. As I said, I suggested that we go from the 2.8 and bump it at least 600,000 heading into this, knowing that there could be a union issue and the fees were going to go up for this first year. So the budget had about 3.4 million allocated for the services. The year 1 bid amount for ABM is 3.6 roughly, for KBS almost 5.5, and for MFM 5 million. The 462,000 is what ABM will be paid for their July and August services based on their current agreement. So when we apply that to the other 2 companies to get apples-to-apples cost comparisons, because we will be paying that in addition to the year 1 bid amount of the 3.6. So you're looking at the first year of about $4 million for ABM, because it's their 3.6 that they proposed plus the 462 that they're going to be paid for July and August. So when we look at that, it's 4 million. KBS is 5.9, and MFM is about 5.5. We're considering apples-to-apples comparisons. So favorable versus unfavorable variance. Obviously, it's not favorable compared to the 3.4 budget. So if you were to bring ABM on board the first year, we're going to be paying about $600,000 more than was budgeted for the custodial services. If you consider KBS, you're going to be paying about $2.5 million more than was budgeted for. And if you bring in MFM, $2.1 million more. And I should mention that Aramark, after we went to them and said, hey, we need your union rates, decided that they were going to withdraw from the process because they faced some challenges with if they were to pay union rates here, the impact it would have on some neighboring clients and union implications there as well. So they opted to not provide a number. So that is the comparison of the firms. That is the first year impact. And really, I think it just comes down to more discussion on what you think is best.
Doug, could you just do a quick clarification if you could? I know some board members have heard this before, but for the public. We were notified when, at what date or around what time that ABM is or our people are now unionized.
So during the bid process, when we had the mandatory pre-proposal meeting, we made everyone aware that there was a possibility that ABM was going to go into an agreement with 32BJ. But we had at that time, we had no documentation or anything to say that they are and that you should base your bids on this. It was just hearsay at the time. We actually got the document from ABM, the actual recognition agreement, about 2 days ago.
It was dated when?
It was dated April 26th, effective May 1st.
So did they have any right to notify the district that they are now in a unionized situation?
I don't
Because
know.
that to me changes the whole concept of this.
I don't know if they have rights. Because the rates in the.
If you know,
I'm not an attorney. I can't tell you that for sure, but I can tell you that it didn't affect their numbers to us because the actual numbers aren't effective until September 1st when they are no longer contracted with the district. So I think if the numbers would have impacted the district, they would have had an obligation to tell us. But I think that's just my own non-legal response.
I have follow-up questions, but I think it was important to get that on the table before.
That's a good question. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Can you just restate that? That surprised me. We just found out about this 2 days ago from a document that you received from ABM that was dated 4/26, effective 5/1. Why the delay?
I can't tell you that. All I was told was that they were considering it, that the genesis of it is that the topic was discussed at several public meetings, I think back in October, November, December, and that after those public meetings that the ABM staff, whether they approached the union approached them, said, hey, we can work with you on this, and there was enough interest in the staff that's here. They signed a document that they were interested in joining the union. I guess they officially joined the union, but there was never any confirmation with us that indeed did happen. There was nothing shared with us. We asked the question, but we didn't get any documentation. We received it.
And so they sit on that for over a month before we're informed about it,
That's correct.
with mere weeks to make a decision, and the administration had to scramble to do this comparison.
And I asked that question, and they said that if any of the companies would have called 32BJ, they would have shared that information with them. It wasn't information that wasn't available to anyone that would have called 32BJ.
Can you share that document with us to look at? Do we have that available for review?
If I didn't, I will. I thought I did, but maybe I didn't share that document. Yep, not a problem.
Anybody else want to say something? I have a question along that line. So they're a current employee of ours, a current contractor, and they unionized while we're paying them, and we don't know for 60 days?
you're paying them based on the contract amount that you agreed to.
Sure, and but did they unionize and they effective, they still unionized while they were being compensated by us?
Sounds like it.
And that's their right to do so.
Right, but we wouldn't know about it, right? That's where the question is. If there is a question.
When did may I?
Yes,
When did the union contract go into effect?
The union contract goes into effect per the letter that was shared with me September 1st,
Yeah.
2022.
So it wasn't as though the contract was going into effect July 1 or July.
No, and then the actual insurance benefits kick in, I think, in January of 23.
then what was the letter dated
Yeah.
May 1st?
May 27th, I believe,
May,
or April 27th, effective May 1st. So I think.
what was that letter effective? What was effective?
Right.
Right.
I think you said it in there, Dave.
Yeah, I'm looking at.
Because obviously
Did I
they
share-
don't unionize until September 1st, but then
April
what's
27th,
effective?
2022, the American Building Maintenance Company, ABM, was told effective May 1st, 2022, that ABS and Service Employee International Local BJ agreed to recognize all the workers performing janitorial services working at the Council Rock School District located in Newtown, PA. The Philadelphia Suburban Contractors Agreement shall be in full force with the following exceptions listed below. Wages effective September 1st, 2022. So all employees shall be paid the full rate of pay listed under the collective bargaining agreement effective that date. And health and welfare effective January 1st, 2023. All the workers shall be covered by the health insurance under the CBA effective that date. And that is the document that I got emailed to me the other day.
I appreciate that. So May 1st, it was effectively recognized, but they went into the bid process and we only found out afterwards. So whether there's a legal issue or not, it still seems that we've been put into a predicament here where it could have been a little more open and transparent. It should be looked into.
They told me that they were considering it, that the staff was talking to the union, that they may unionize, and we shared that information. What we knew at the mandatory pre-proposal.
What,
We
was
had no
that before or
documentation
after
at that
May?
time.
Was that before or after May 1st when they already knew the document?
Do you remember when that meeting was?
Trying to make it
Pretty
bigger.
good meeting.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. So it's before then, it's fine.
I can find out, but either way, we didn't have any documentation from anyone.
That's fine.
I
Go ahead.
think that was in May.
Mike.
The actual meeting was in May.
The meeting was in May.
I have an unrelated question, circle around union stuff all night. ABM came to us last year and couldn't staff. Is there anything in any of these contracts that says if you don't staff, we won't pay you?
There are penalties in there are performance penalties written into the contract.
Is that staff penalties or performance penalties? Because, we had a conversation at one point here, and, we were told that schools were cleaned, and then one of the board members went in on a Saturday and found ketchup all over the wall in the cafeteria. So, that can happen, I get that, but, it's more, I want Apple level 2 or whatever we're doing, but I also want the number of people that are supposed to clean the buildings to be in the buildings, because we're not gonna get Apple level 2 if you don't have people in the building doing it. So, you can't.
Let's see if I can find that, Mike, while you guys are talking here.
I don't, that's the only question I have, is I want teeth in our contracts from this point forward. So,
It's a basically meeting at the level 2 level of cleanliness, and if it's not met, then there are follow-up procedures to follow, up to a penalty up to $240,000 annually.
But
Which is pretty significant.
they also decide if they are meeting apple level 2, right?
No, it's not up to the vendor to, they can certainly report and tell us by their trending that they're meeting it, but there's key performance indicators that, we have to look at, the district has to look at together with the contract.
Well, then I guess this question to Dr. Sanko, who on staff is responsible for that? I mean, does it become a he said, she said discussion?
It's going to have to be, and I don't know when Doug was here, if it was Doug
It would have
directly.
been.
Yeah, so it'll be whoever's replacing Doug or Tom Crow.
But we do have some good teeth in here.
Do we have teeth in the new contract, or are you talking about the existing one that's about to expire?
No, that's the new contract.
That's the new one.
It's still just apple level. I mean, it's still a fairly nebulous metric.
Right.
And
Does the roof smell clean? It's,
well, you can always hire an industrial, James, please.
Yeah, I think the standards that Doug shared with us previously are pretty specific and drawn up by a professional organization. I mean, it's more than just, does the room smell good?
I understand. I understand.
There's a 10-day cure period. If they don't cure it in those 10 days, then we have a right to withhold monies. The district has the right to withhold monies.
I would ask Dr. Sanko because, I've heard from principals that you open a hotline so the principals can report up. Make it nice public domain, right, knowable reports that,
Which is my question, if I may.
Sure.
What sort of feedback have we gotten this past year on performance and satisfaction with cleanliness in buildings?
Well, when I was here, I mean, I understand that there certainly were those issues where, somebody doesn't do what they were supposed to do in a building on an evening. But overall, I think most principals would tell you that, I'd be surprised if they didn't, that the level of cleanliness had greatly improved from Aramark to ABM, and I think that they did do a much better job than Aramark did. And I can only base it on Aramark because that's who I knew when I was here, and Aramark was here for, a pretty good amount of time. So, I think I can tell you that they're working very hard this summer. I'm seeing the reports that they are tracking their cleaning for the summer. They're sharing them with Tom Crow and with Pauline, I believe, and Christine downstairs. So Christine Diagini, and they're taking that seriously. I did have a pretty long call with, I had calls with all of the finalists. But I did ask ABM, because now their number feels so much lower than the others. First it felt higher, then it felt lower. So you're good, right? You have this covered. They say they value the relationship with the district. They said that they went in leaner than they would have with a lot of clients. That's why their number is not as big as others. They recognize the union requirements, and they're very familiar with dealing with unions in the Northeast.
Is that, excuse me, did Rob Cox review that bid? Because what he normally does is in the contract, when we go out to bid, there's a clause in there that says that the RFP submission by the vendors becomes part of the contract. So if they said they're going to have 77 bodies here on a regular basis to address your issue, and they don't, they're in violation of the contract because the RFP becomes, the response becomes part of the contract.
Yes, yeah. First of all, yes, Rob has reviewed this multiple times. He reviewed this proposal when we put it out the first time, and
I'm just wondering if he has that clause in there because he always puts it in my contract.
we absolutely make the RFP, the actual, the proposal, the response, everything's part of the agreement. I've done that, but I hear what you're saying, but it also says that they have to meet Apple level 2. So you could argue if they have, this is a fool's argument. If they have less, but they're meeting Apple level 2, then are they in violation?
Mr. Tate.
Thank you. Yeah, that touches on a question I had. I didn't write down what the KBS FTE number was, but I wrote down MFM proposed 85 FTE.
They had 75 full-time and 10 part-time. The other guys did not have as many part-time.
Got it. Okay.
So if you look at MFM, it was 75 full-time, 10 part-time. Here it's 77
Yeah.
full-time, 76 full-time. So
What's our current head count and
the current head count is very close to that. Since they've entered into this agreement, the staff has been pretty much sticking around because they know what's coming. So they are around 70 staff. That's the response I got when I asked.
What's our current contract situation?
Well, it's all inclusive, so it's the general manager, it's everyone. So they're probably close to, they have, I think it's 70, 77 or 78. Yeah,
So, I mean,
they're pretty close, yeah.
but they're not meeting now.
well, they're also
The summer, yeah, and the summer sometimes they reduce and they totally change the way they work in the summer. Because they're not working at night, they're not manning all of the schools for activities and meeting events. So they're shifting them around to attack the schools and get them clean, especially those that have camps, because they wait for the camp to go. As soon as they do, they load it up with people. So it's a little different this summer.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Rizzo.
So I'm interested in these past two slides that we're looking at. So this is the revised number that shows ABM at 13.5 and KBS and MFM at 17.8 and 17.7. Can we go back to the original one? Go back one slide where we just were. This one, is this reflecting the same numbers? 13.5, 17.8, 17.7.
55, 17, yes.
So because the numbers that we were looking at a couple days ago were different.
Because we had them they prorated July and August, so that reduced these numbers.
Okay. Could we look, do we still have those original bid numbers before the recent adjustments?
I don't know because
There, that's it, isn't it? No, that's different.
No, because that's before the union, so no.
That's what I mean, that's what I want to look at. That's what I want to look at. Right there. So there we've got KFM at 11.7.
Yeah, KBS.
KBS, excuse me.
About 11.8.
11.8, and then MFM at 10.7.
Yeah, about 10.8.
And where's ABM? Are they the bottom?
ABM's number is the same, 13, because they submitted knowing that they were union fees. So their number is the only number from the group that we talked to.
And so that explains why the other two rise roughly 30% and ABM stays the same.
Correct.
And that 30% increase, that's directly from KBS and MFM? Or is
Yes.
that us evaluating?
No, those numbers came from that.
Okay. I have a couple other questions, but on different topics. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
I just want to make a
Sure,
statement.
go ahead.
Two things. The gentleman in the corner, you're entitled to public comment at the end of the session, so, but if you're not involved, you're not so much involved in this, but I hope you do have public comment because the board would like to hear it, I'm sure. I'm just going to make a statement. You know, we're looking at 3 contracts with 3 good companies. The current company, ABM, we're here because they came back to the table looking for additional money last year. And the board opted to send it out as an RFP. So here we are with the RFP. Just a little history lesson for the community. During the RFP process, the company goes unionized, and the costs are going to go up effective September 1st. This board's got to make a decision between staying with a company that has gotten to this point right now, where we're looking at the numbers, concerned about the numbers. They couldn't deliver on an initial 3-year contract, which is why we're back here. And ironically, they're $2.5 million less than the next closest company. But with that being said, that's $2.5 million of taxpayer money. So this is a real problem for me. Because if I spend 2.5 million more, because I have a problem with ATM, which I do, then I'm taking the taxpayer money. If I don't do that, I'm doing the right thing in a lot of people's eyes. So this is my struggle tonight, Doug. I have no intention of giving business to ABM on the surface, but I'm almost being forced to because of the break in those type of bids. And that concerns me much like our bus service last year. So I felt it's important to tell the public that. And Mike, you and I have spoken about this at length over the last couple of days.
Yeah, and to add to that, I believe the additional history lesson is that ABM, the last time we started with them, they came in lower. They were the lower bid. The break was similarly spaced out. It's like, we got to go with you guys, right? And then they came back, and then they started lining up with others. So what confidence do we have that their bid of 13.5 isn't going to turn to 17.7 and 17.8 in 1.5 years? Because they already did that. That's just happened, right? So that's the added element here of this relationship.
And this board's opinion, the majority at least that voted about putting it back to RFP, was that you're not going to break the contract when you negotiate with the school district of Council Rock. You own the contract, you got to pay. You know, they're a $7 billion money-making business. This account lost money. That's not our fault, that's their fault. That's bad management. But yet, I got to look at taxpayer amount now and say, I'm going to go back to the same company that got us here again. It's disconcerting, it's wrong. And that's money that's coming out of our kids' classroom.
With ketchup on the wall.
Do we know how long the duration of the union contract?
All I know is what is the one document that was shared with me, and so I want to say it was effective at least 1 year, but their number reflects the increases that they stated. I don't know how long this is. I can't answer, but I can, I mean, if there's an interest to either go back to ABM and ask them or call them, you know, that's an option for you to get them on the phone.
I mean, we ended up with these three. What if it, I'm looking at the matrix that you came up with, so I would assume that the higher scores were the ones that made it through. But I mean, the difference between, say, MFM and HES and Interstate, I mean, it was only a 0.5. Like, I mean, they seem to be a lot less in their dollar figures, but I assume they were just for other reasons, just discounted and didn't make it through.
For other reasons. I mean, look, there were 6 that were kind of highlighted as companies to consider for interviews, and you know, the decision was, you know, to bring 4 of them in and interview them. So that's who we interviewed. But and you're right, you know, HES and Interstate were the other 2 of the 6.
Yeah, like you said, I'm not interested. You know, I don't really want to spend $2 to $2.5 million more for custodial service, but you know, I was one of the ones, along with everybody else, who said, you know, if we agree to renegotiate contracts, we're going to have everybody knocking at the door.
Yeah, I totally understand why. I understood both sides of it when I brought the issue to you, you know, in my own position. I understood. I think even if you had done, you know, agreed, there was a chance because it became so public that eventually that group was going to unionize regardless of what you did. And you would have been in a situation where you'd be facing union rates regardless. So I understand, and I can understand how you feel. But I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I think at some point this group is going to unionize and
Yeah,
increase the cost.
and I don't have a problem with that. I was a part of the union for 25 years, part of the union now. I understand that concept. But, you know, It's just the method of operation of this company. And the way, we're here today because they couldn't live up to their contract, for whatever reason. And there's nothing to say, we give you a contract year 2, you're back here saying we want more money. And then we're RFPing it again. And then ABM, ironically, might be the lowest one again. And they're forcing your hands. This is like paying a kidnapper, you know? And it's borderline extortion, like you said, it really is. And these are kids that need the money in the schools, in the classrooms. And we're having a conversation over $2.5 million that is the break between a company that put us here and the next company. The gentleman who's here, not in this company's not even up there. So, look, I mean, we got to vote on this, so, you know, we have a week, and that's the other problem. We're the 11th hour.
Right, and that's sort of the concern also, is that they had a document that was effective over a month ago that wasn't delivered to us. And that's difficult to say that this is a company that wants to have a good relationship with us when with that level of behavior. It's difficult. I mean, yeah. I've got a couple others, but I want others to talk.
Thanks. I really understand and share the displeasure. I get that. That's not lost on me. You know, as I think back historically, we were displeased with our previous contractor. The cleanliness of the schools was not to our standard. We were unhappy with them. There was a reason why we didn't continue with them. And so here we are. I want to focus on, you know, how has the performance been? Are our buildings clean? Is this a healthy environment for kids and teachers to work in? I'm concerned about the money, yes, but I want to see a company that, from what I'm hearing, has delivered this past year. I have a question too about, while there is that transition period, how disruptive would it be to then go to a different vendor for this service? Where does that put us? And they're an untested company with us. We at least have a history with ABM. So I don't know if you can answer that.
Well, I think it's certainly not, this isn't just a, you know, like going out every couple of years for vendors to do your preventative maintenance stuff. This is a pretty serious business. Yeah. This is one of the biggest contracts the district has. This is one of the most important because it does keep buildings clean and safe for kids and staff. So I do think that it's very important, especially in these times where you just don't know what's going to happen next with viruses and whoever knows. But yeah, it felt relatively seamless last time, but it's not a simple process. I mean, they have you know, stations with their disinfectants in closets in every school. They have to come out. The new company comes in and puts their new products in place of where the old ones were. There's mixing stations and things. Basically, ABM takes all their equipment, and the new company brings in all new equipment. So part of this also is that the other two companies have to bring in equipment where ABM already has their equipment in place. So that certainly affects the first year one-time costs. It's not a simple process, but I am sure that Tom Crow and the team that he has will make that work with another company if that's the desire of the board. You know, I don't think that would be a reason to say no. I would hope that eventually you can establish a relationship with someone so it can be more like the Aramark was for, you know, after 3 years you're able to kind of work together and amend it and continue because it's important for the principals. They get to know the people in their buildings. It's, you know, like any other group of people in the building. So it's not easy, but I think, you know, Tom and team will be able to make that work.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keith. Mr. Roosevelt.
Yeah, I got a couple more. I've got 3. If somebody could remind me what the renegotiated hourly rate that ABM was asking for a few months ago? Was it 15? Was it coming up to 15?
They wanted to be around $15 an hour.
Could we go back to that other slide of what their range is now? This one. So the top one, they're going to, what is it, something to 24 to 29?
28 to 29, so that's year 1, 2, and 3.
So a couple months ago, they told us that all they needed was 15 an hour, and they could fulfill the rest of the contract for the next year and a half. And now here, we're looking at 24 to 29. On top of that, we had a company that was one of the highest, most expensive ones, but then with this reevaluation, now they come out to be one of the less expensive, and they're sitting on something for an hour, is that right? So where's the confidence once again, right? They told us the renegotiation was gonna be 15 an hour, and now here a little bit later, with some really thought, it's jumped a whole extra 10 on top of that, all the way up to double.
It's 15, they're around 15.30 or 15.80 an hour. And then that includes the benefits in it. So the first year is less, it's 15 something an hour per hour plus the benefits. And then the other benefits kick in, which is why it goes to 28 and 29. It becomes
So quick clarification, is that to the employee or is that to the business?
Well, this lump sum is,
No, the hourly
It's
rate,
everything.
the hourly rate, is that to the employer or is that to the, do you know?
It says,
I don't
it says custodian
no,
hourly rate.
Plus
I think it's like anyone else. You get an hourly rate plus your benefits. So they're not making 24 an hour, they're making
Right.
15 something an hour.
Yeah, you can't read it, but it says
Including
No, hourly rate.
plus benefits.
plus benefits.
Right. So no, they're getting like roughly $15 an hour through the required 32 BJ rate. And then they get a mandatory increase again in X number of months, and then each year they get their increases, whatever the rates are, which is why everybody's numbers jump from 34 to 35 to 36, 24.
Jumping 30%. So my other two questions, because I think that's important and difficult to dive into to compare this. Is that aligned with what they were saying, or is this significantly higher? I don't know. But it also is interesting because they were the only ones to come in with this, and now 11th hour, they've put themselves in a position where they're from one of the highest bidders to one of the lowest bidders. Two other questions regarding the matrix. Mr. Hickey was touching on this. Where did this matrix come from?
The matrix that I had developed the last time we went through the RFP process.
What is it based on? Some of it looks contractual, some of it looks informational.
Yeah, I mean, it is, some of it is, you can see it in the handout. It's basically by tab of the RFP. So the RFP has tabs 1 through 8, and then this is how well did each one of these companies respond to each one of those tabs and the requirements of each tab.
Were all of the members that were involved in the process involved in the scoring, or was the scoring conducted by one or a few of those that were involved?
This is one where I looked at the numbers, and I read the RFPs and scored them based upon how well they answered. So it's a consistent, it's not like several people with differing opinions providing that feedback.
So you were the one to define
I put this together on behalf of the district, yes.
Right. And then as a result of that, that's what enabled the narrowing from 9 down to 6 and down to 4.
And then the 6 the entire document was given to the district, and then those 6 were highlighted as, hey, maybe these are the ones you might want to consider. If you want to consider anyone, you should.
Right.
But those were the 6 that scored the best based on this matrix. But of that 6, 4 were recommended.
Did MFM indicate that they would not follow our policies and procedures and updates and would not provide child abuse clearance?
I'm sorry?
Did MFM indicate in their proposal that they would not follow our policies and procedures and would not update them in time comes, and specifically not provide and update all of their workers that are in our schools with child protective background checks?
I don't believe so.
Because they were scored a 1, where KBS and ABM were given a 2.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the specifics and tell you how the scoring was. I mean, that's something.
Because I would find that difficult for a company to say that they're
Yeah, I
not
don't think
doing
that was
that.
the only criteria for why they would have gotten a 1 versus a 2. I mean, I think if because there's other things in here that pertain to that, not just,
Well, there's other things that pertain to the score, but on that particular line item.
I think it's how well the question was answered in the RFP.
Right.
Some were very clear about how they would address that, others were not so much.
So were the other bidders given an opportunity, if they weren't clear, to reestablish that, or did we just sort of score them and move on?
We scored based on how they answered the, the RFP.
Okay.
But again, MFM was one of the companies considered for.
No, I know.
And regardless of the one versus the two,
Right.
it's the overall score. And it's any of these companies that could be considered. I think there were only 3 that weren't highlighted that should be considered, and one basically was proposing 62 FTEs. We know that you can't operate with 62. We just know from experience, from my experience that I had.
Sure.
So then there were only 2 others that weren't recommended. And,
Right.
so, and I think for good reason, the other 2.
Mr. Hickey?
I don't know if this is within your realm or whatever, but it's something that Mike touched upon earlier, is as far as putting teeth into this. Like if they say, because like I said, I'm really not liking this sour taste that's in my mouth that keeps on growing, but if ABM says, we propose 76 full-time employees on a daily basis, and they come up with 71, is there any way for us to take off a percentage of what we're paying them based on the fact that they're not supplying what they've promised?
So I know that when ABM talked to the district before, they were willing to enter into some language similar to that. I'm sure that ABM would be willing to, there is no contract signed at this point. So if you said it was contingent upon, expanding upon those potential penalties and however it would be fair to both sides, I'm sure that they would be willing to do something. Again, we could call them and talk to them as a group if you'd like. I mean, I could get Chad on the phone and he would answer I can't answer your questions for them because, I don't.
All right, you're done.
I want to just add for you, I mean, and one of the things that is in there is a 10-day cure. So, I mean, this is obscene, but you could have 65 employees for 9 days and bring them all up to 76 on day 10, and we've cured her. But for 9 days, nothing happened. I mean, and then we're back to 76 for a couple of days, and then back to, I don't, I'm not disagreeing with you, Bob. I just, I want to make sure we do this right, and then, so, that's all.
Can I mention something? That you can make the language however you want. The 10-day cure rate is for performance of cleanliness. I would think you'd correct that. Lack of manpower could be treated differently, perhaps. Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, Dr. Steinberg, if you could you save me an email this evening? I'd like to hear from every principal over the course of the last year, break it up into quarters, tell me the status of their buildings, and we will watch for how they feel they were cleaned. They can respond by email and you can share it with the board.
If I could jump in, it's tough being chair because you talk last. It's tough for me. Doug, I just wanted to tie this together for myself. The letter recognition was dated or effective May 1st. I think you said in the course of people talking, you did determine that the meeting for the pre-bid meeting was after May 1st.
I think it was the 24th.
Okay, so the 24th of May. So whoever, I'd like to know, get that letter to the board, as I think Mr. Roosevelt asked.
We have it.
Oh, okay.
I think I shared it last
Uh,
time.
All right, and then I believe that you were made aware, let's say the 12th, this week, Tuesday, whatever it was a couple of days ago.
A couple of days ago. I got
Okay,
it.
so the 12th. So literally, we understand there was some friction, and unfortunately, we weren't budging on contract, and we all know $15 an hour would be more livable wages, and we're not, this isn't against people that are trying to make a living, just a contractual thing. what I talk about with relationships is goodwill, fair practices, best practices when you deal with your partners. And what I'm finding here is a lack of what I could actually even vote on this at this point, because, and then I would like, some solicitor review of how things are going, because if it's a case that you wait 68 days to tell your customer that things have changed until the fan hits whatever, it hits the wall, and we literally have zero time to, well, because I have a lot of questions. I'm not an expert at this, but there are ways around finding other options. And if we're stuck to a 3-year contract, no one wants a 1-year contract, and we can do it another way, but how are you going to hire 70 people in 45 days? It wouldn't have been 45 days had we known we would have had over 100 days to be in a place. So if this is the kind of relationship that we're entering, I really want to look at an alternative, drastic alternative, and leave no stone turned before we just go ahead and submit to this, because something doesn't sound right to me, and whether it's legal or not, I think it should be looked at, because I feel like if we're damaged by this, by not having the opportunity to exercise our rights as public officials, and information was held from us, and there's restitution to be made, then I would like to know not just that, but also know what other avenues we can do. Because I don't want to, and I could be absolutely wrong. I'm stating it publicly. My notions and my instincts and these things could be wrong, but when I was very surprised when that pops up out of nowhere. I mean, we've been dealing with a lot as a board, and for this to pop up like that, it's maybe it's a chess match, and cheer. We're all here to play.
Joe, thanks. I don't know if Andy or Doug, regardless, these are the top 3 bids that we have discussed as a board, what direction we're going, we can do it. And even, so, which amount is budgeted in the next year's budget? Do we know?
3.4.
3.4 budgeted.
So either way, we under budgeted.
So either 600,000 or 2 million.
These are the under budgeted by numbers.
That's right.
That's just year one, and it goes way up.
But it affects our budget, and it took forever to look.
Right.
It does forever.
Well, there's somebody that withheld the information.
They came to us 2 days ago that radically reshaped this entire thing, that took it to an amount that was budgeted and accounted for to something that we can't afford. So don't we have the ability, as someone receiving the bid, to go back to these bidders and say, 3.4 is our top end. We can't afford more than 3.426, 204. That's it. We got $3.4 million for this. And if they want to work with us, they should be given an opportunity.
I think you have the right to ask them any of those questions. Just keep in mind, though, that when you, I'm just saying this, as just saying, when you ask somebody to start chipping away at their number, then that puts them in a position where, a greater position of coming back to you later saying they don't have enough money.
Well, didn't they do that to us? Chip up the number.
They did. And you can, and I'm sure that a company will work with you. I mean, I think if you go to any one of these and say, hey, what can you do? Because they all have some level of profit built in. The question is how much profit can they live
That's right.
with or live without. So I think including ABN probably has some, I think they have a lower margin of profit than the other guys.
Because we've been put in a position as a board where we're getting last minute information that we have to act upon within a couple of weeks, and it puts companies in a difficult position whether to hire people in a certain amount of time, and our taxpayer, we're accountable to the taxpayers. But we also need clean schools. So we're really put in a tough spot to agree to one of 3 companies, none of which we can afford.
So maybe
based on the budget.
If you don't want to publicly talk to ABN, you have a list of things you want Andy and I to call them about, we can make a call and ask them, questions and see what they can and can't do.
When is our deadline to make a decision? Next week. Next week.
No, that's a deadline you created, that's not a
No, that's a real deadline, because
They'll onboard somebody, if we choose another company.
40
There's
days.
an
they
onboarding
need
process.
they need the month of August.
Right.
Joe, I don't mean.
No, you're absolutely correct.
I'm not
It's 40
being
days,
asked.
40 days or 40 days, yeah,
Yeah, they
never mind.
need, I'm just saying it in your behalf, they need those days to overlap, to make sure there's no.
So we have-
If you're saying it's the same company, then you have those days to, then you do have.
This, I think, seems like a lot of work. Somebody's got to go back to these and possibly also entertain others of the 6 that were cut out.
Well, that's important what you're just saying, just to follow up on what he's saying. If we do, if our notion tonight is to leave with ABM in mind because of solely on price, then the 40 days are not needed.
Because they're already here. And they're
Right, so the
already
40
staffed.
days is
So
only
then-
if
then
you're
you would
not going
have
to go
those-
somebody else.
You would have that time to move the actual approval of the agreement back. You'd have time to actually have those discussions and negotiations.
But you just committed to it.
But you've committed, because you're right.
Well, I'd be happy to see if they could do a one-year contract, because I'm kind of wiggling my chair right now. That's what I'd like.
I'm confused. Doug, if you could clarify, does ABM have a contract with this bargaining unit in place? And if so, when does it or did it become effective?
I have the document that says that they have an agreement with 32BJ
Right.
effective May 1st, with the cost increase not effective until September 1st.
So it
And with
isn't.
the health and
Okay.
welfare benefits, January 1st.
Great. That clarifies it. So the other bidders then do not have a contract with that bargaining unit, and if they were chosen, they would have to negotiate an agreement with the custodian's bargaining unit. So their numbers would reflect an estimate based on what they think they could reach an agreement on with the bargaining unit.
They've reached out to 32BJ and had conversations with them when they put their union rates together and shared them with us.
I
In fact,
see.
they resent, one of them resent, or two resent this to me.
Oh, so their numbers are based on conversation with the bargaining unit.
Yes.
But on the other hand, ABM has an agreement in place with the bargaining unit.
They've established this. They've established this bar by having this agreement, so that's what put us in a position.
Right.
In a position that you're in, yes.
Yeah, so they've really cemented themselves into the catbird seat as it
I don't
used
know,
to
I
be.
don't know if they expected the other guys to be as high as they are. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know that they knew where their competitors would be even with this opportunity. The other guys didn't know.
well, that's right, they wouldn't have known the numbers. So when KBS was talking to the bargaining unit, they didn't know what ABM had agreed to, and
If they did, they wouldn't have come back at 5.4.
that they would have been much lower.
3.6.
Yeah, they were much,
And you would have seen 3.7, 3.8. I mean, clearly, that's the best number those other companies could provide.
right, so ABM had the advantage of an agreement in
In
place.
fact, MFM gave us a number and they came back and said, I can do a little better, and took 100,000 off and made it better.
Well, now that these numbers,
Now they're out there, now the numbers are out.
exactly, so to the point that.
I'm sure you would love to bid right
So,
now.
so to the point so legally, so to Michael's point, now that the ABM numbers are out there, and we all know what ABM got the bargaining unit to agree to, does that potentially allow the other bidders to adjust their bid, or is their bid locked because they submitted it by the date that they were due?
It's a professional service agreement, it's not a traditional bid, like when you receive bids and the bids are the bids, and you have no opportunity to change the numbers unless you go back out to bid. See, again, this would have to be reviewed with the solicitor, not me.
Right.
I slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night, but
So Doug, if you get a phone call tomorrow from KDS that says, we just found $2.5 million we're not gonna charge you. Is that legal, or you don't know? Like, we're sharpening our pencils based on what we just saw last night in the meeting, that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Right, and Doug, it's fair if you don't know.
I don't know, the question is it ethical or is it legal?
Well, and to the
You know, you've
point,
shared the numbers, so at this point,
Well, we're in a public meeting, I mean, there is a number. Well, maybe it is.
Right.
And we didn't do it for a nefarious reason. We did it for our deliberations, so.
Doug, I hope your phone rings tomorrow,
Yeah, can I
from all the
make,
other companies out there.
can I make a comment? So as I said, I think that had we known, and the actual other bidders known that this was a bargaining unit bid, not just 2 days ago, because what are you going to come up with in 2 days? You're going to give a very rough proposal numbers and safe numbers. Had we had those extra, like 100 days for everybody to work it out, that's why, as I said, I don't think I'm comfortable, and I would propose that if we are going to go with ABM, that I wouldn't probably feel comfortable going more than just giving them an extra year at the current rate and give us the time to do it the right, fair, and honest way, because right now, I'm going to lock in year one. They're giving us nice and low to year one, and it continues to grow to whatever.
to that point, Joe, you have the same 120 day out that they do, right? So if you entered the first year and, you know, there was an issue, you could, you know, enter the same
So
120 days.
can we start negotiating another contract as soon as this start things going? We can start soliciting?
The problem with that is, sooner or later, these guys are,
They're
they're
not
not
gonna,
going to be interested in
Yeah, they're not gonna play.
participating with the district.
Right,
Why?
because it's a lot of work.
yeah, nobody's gonna wanna go through
It's
this.
only one company that's been treating us this way.
and that's the point. This is not a fair bidding process to the other 8 to 9 companies that participated. It's not fair to the taxpayers. It's not fair to this board. It's not fair to this administration. And is this really a fair and open process? It doesn't appear to be. So that's kind of, I think, where we're stuck. Because we did sleep in Holiday Inn. We're not experts on that.
I would say, the only thing I would say to that is, this is the group that rose to the top in terms of who the interest was for the custodial team. The collective bargaining agreement numbers are the same numbers for every one of the groups that got those numbers. The rest is their profit, their equipment, their supplies. So, you know, they did have the ability to actually reduce their numbers after looking at this again.
Okay.
A quick one, I'm not sure where this is going to head. I mean, we already know, and we're going to find out more from the principals of the level of service that we got from ABM. The other 2 companies in question, did they provide references of schools that they've done, and did we vet them? Like, did we check up, like, what was their levels? You know what I mean? Like, we go with somebody else, I'm going to find out those.
That's an easy thing to do. I could call, you know, all those references. There's a lot of references. We were clear we wanted references. We wanted the contacts of the people involved. We can make those calls. I mean, they're going to give me good references because they're not going to put bad references in their proposal.
Right.
So the hard, you know, you want to try to find out where they aren't.
Right, but I mean, also by the same token, you want to see, like, I don't say comparable, you know, how many buildings do we have, you know?
Yeah.
20, you know, I don't know, you could go to a district that has 3, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I listed that kind of in my review in here. It talks a bit about, you know, how many references, how many PA schools, what state they're from.
Yeah.
So I have I just gave you an abbreviated version.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Sure, Mr. Tate.
One last comment. I think whoever at the higher levels of ABM made the decision to withhold this union agreement from us made a mistake. You know, it doesn't have anything to do with ABM's performance or potential performance. I think somebody did something that, frankly, I feel is unethical. And I think it's unfortunate because they created a real dilemma for us. But I'm really disappointed at the way they handled themselves in this negotiation because it's put us in a bind.
I agree.
Joe, it's safe to say I don't sense any consensus leaving this room. And I'm not,
See you next
we can
Thursday.
talk, I mean, I think one ask them, I think it's fair, I'd like to hear from the principals, seriously.
Yeah.
And that gives me a little, to your point, Mr. Kennedy, gives me a little bit of a serious answer.
Yeah.
Not somebody that may assume.
Right.
They're in the buildings every day. They know when the employees are showing up, they know when the buildings are short employees. And then what I'm interested to see is during that time period, if you do it in quarters, when it started hitting the fan, when they came back to the table, did it get worse? So, I hope our team out there would help the board in making the best decision for the kids at Council Rock.
The only thing I'll add is, that's a whole year, you're asking the principal to remember a year back, so.
They're very well educated, Doug.
All right, that's fine.
Did they still have the books in the buildings? Do they make notations?
They do.
Every building has that. So easy enough to refer
ABM
back.
has their own sheet that they've done and presented.
They do, and some of this moved to the school dues for kind of reporting custodial things.
And while you were an employee here, you were checking on those and evaluating those. Because it wasn't just ABM making their criteria and scoring themselves, you oversaw them.
Right. Tom Crow and I had quarterly client business meetings with ABM.
Okay.
Well, how do you guys feel?
Great.
All right. There's
Well,
go ahead.
As always, thank you for your work.
Yeah,
It's
no,
great to see you in person.
thanks for staying on
I'm
board.
sorry for the position you're in. I
It'll work out.
understand how you feel.
We got a lot of work.
It'll work out.
Oh, I do have a couple more things.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. So for the board meeting, we'll figure out to be determined. There are couple other board agenda items. One is a no-cost change order for Hillcrest. This was in the facilities update that I shared with you in July, early July. Basically, they're going to move substantial completion to the 29th of July and final completion to the 31st of July. So from 1 July to the 31st of July. And the things that we're working on, the folding partition manufacturer went defunct. So we have no option but to ask for another manufacturer. If for some reason it doesn't come in, the GC has agreed in a couple of rooms that these go into to build a temporary partition with drywall, with insulation, finish the ceiling into it. When the partitions come, they'll come take that wall out and put the partitions in, because Nakia does need those rooms separated physically for the start of the school year. So she does need those partitions. Door hardware, some of the other things that'll happen after the 31st, but before kids get back, are listed here. There's nothing that isn't going to be wrapped up. The lawn and landscaping is simply because they just want to wait as close to fall as they can for some of that work. The playground is the one piece that finishes late. It's just the delivery of the playground. They had their submittals in, they ordered it. It's one of those products that's just really lagging. That is going to come, but they do have some play equipment on site already that Nakia can use for that. The only other major one here that I want to mention, and we're working on this with Matt. Is it listed here, Matt?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't really want to talk about that. I really didn't, because Ed would like me for that I don't. North no cost extension of time change order. This one is it's a summer project for this year. The hydronic pumps have been delivered. This is to replace the hot and chilled pumps for the chillers and boilers in the building. However, the pumps are here, but the variable frequency drives that help control those pumps, the pumps aren't running at 100%. This actually controls the speed of the pumps based upon the need versus high, medium, and low. It's an energy savings piece, but it's needed. They are not here. they will not be shipped until the 25th, assuming that really that's a real date, because you get dates and then they move. So the contractor said, hey, I would just as soon, instead of trying to make things work, do this next summer at no cost to you. Let's get the pumps here, because they're not just taking a pump out and putting a new pump in. At South, for example, they have pumps that are behind piping that you can't even get to. Totally reconfiguring that piping so that the pumps are accessible for the maintenance men for the rest of the life of that building. So it's taking piping out, it's making changes. It's not something you can simply do temporarily. So the other thing they said that they will do in the meantime is if there are any issues with pumps specifically at North where the bigger problems are, if anything comes up, they'll charge us, but they'll work with us to come out and try to do emergency repairs if something were to happen and keep us going. We do have some redundancies, and they're a very good contractor. So the other thing they are also doing is changing the cooling tower at North. So that is going to be replaced. That's being delivered in October. They'll replace that in November. So they'll do that piece of the work. It's a good time of year to do it when it's starting to cool. You don't need the cooling as much in the building. It's about a week-long process. So they'll take care of that piece now and do the rest. So that's the other no-cost change order. I think it's in the best interest of the district to wait because it's going to take several weeks when you can't interrupt boilers and chillers for kids in the building. So. And that's it.
Go back to the Hillcrest one real quick. Door hardware. Am I to assume that's locks on doors?
We will absolutely have the
That school doesn't open if there aren't locks on the doors.
Right.
Okay, just so we're clear.
Yep. So that's it.
I'd like to circle back back to the proposals for the maintenance real quick to one of the charts. The one had a lot of yellow.
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
On those
Go back.
petitions from the defunct manufacturer, who bears the cost if a replacement manufacturer is substantially more? The contractor or us?
Contract.
Thought so. Good. Thank you.
I'm trying to go back to the one that showed all the man hours. I think it was a bunch of charts with the yellow. And the third one, which I think was, keep going, keep going, let's keep going.
That's the current. These are before union rates were applied.
Go back a little further. Keep going. Is that the beginning?
This is the beginning. This is before.
There's one of the charts that shows
This is
the hours, the total man hours.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find that.
This is the relevant one. This is man. This is.
Doug, I think go forward. Right there.
Okay. So what I'm seeing is full-time equivalent of 85 for MFN and a higher hour, more years. Is that right? So if they were to go more in line with what ABM is, their number would come down, but maybe just by 10%, right?
Yeah, we'll
Still be about
because 10 of them are part-time. I think one of these. So there's a 260 hours per year versus 274 hours per year. They're the only company that put the 274 in for PTO. So if somebody's out, they have a replacement that they're paying to replace them. So that's why their number is different than the other two. These guys are right on the money with 8 hours a day times.
They just have part-time extra, right, for if someone's out.
Yeah.
Well, then now they see everything, everybody sees what's out there, they can sharpen their pencils, we're in this process now. So, go ahead, Mr. Tate.
Well, that's what I would like to talk about is what are the next steps going to be?
We have 1 week to do it.
Yeah. Do you have a suggestion?
Well, listen, that's why I started the meeting by saying I think that the approval is going to be contingent upon solicitors' review of the agreement because I don't know that the agreement will be finalized the night of the 21st. If you know who the vendor is going to be, and we're going back, hey, here's the agreement. It seems like there is a sample agreement in the proposal, but no matter when you do this, their solicitor, their lawyer looks at it and says, I want this change, and then it comes back to Rob, and he says, well, yes to this, no to that, and there's ping pong of it. So I think if it's contingent upon that piece, regardless of who it is, understanding the one that you see may not be the final, but the solicitor will deem it.
How about a suggestion? So I'm going to throw it out there. This is when we have a chance to work. A 1-year extension to the current contract using the union rates instead of using the RFP at all.
I guess that would be, you know, again,
Because I
if
can
you
only
want
do
us to
1
make
year.
a call, we can do that.
Oh, well, I don't know if you need 5 to entertain, but I think at this point, one board member is asking for a different alternative to feel more comfortable. That would be something to entertain.
Well, Joe, I think it's an interesting point because what we budgeted in our budget
Yeah.
is dramatically changed with this new information that we just received. If East Burning Gray thinks it's, we're talking about ethics here, if it's worth a phone call, I mean, I could get behind having a 1-year extension conversation, knowing that we plan accordingly for increases in our budget that, you know, took us forever to land this year.
Yeah.
And now we're already behind the 8 ball. And as I keep saying, that's money that's not going in the classroom.
And all the other contractors needed to adjust their bid because SEIU 32BJ came in and unionized 50% of our current workers
Well,
that are likely going to be a substantial amount of them going to continue to be hired by whoever is selected, correct?
Yeah. Even if you, so, and the only thing I would say is, so say you wanted KBS at their original number that is a union, and they came on board and they were willing to take, of the 70, 36 of those and say, we don't need you, and bring in other folks, right? Then they would be essentially non-union, and then the rubber rats would show up. And I think eventually you would be union anyway.
Yeah.
And then, as Dr. Sanko learned, then the district would be accountable for that unionized rate regardless. So I think you're at the union rate, as Mike and Ed said, you know, forever.
And rubber rats.
Hopefully no rubber.
Well,
rats.
rubber
Nobody
rats
wants
come
rubber
with
rats.
it, apparently.
I've seen them, I worked at Red.
Well, they
Blow up rats are not
Yeah.
good.
Oh, there you go.
Inflatable rats.
So, I like Joe's idea. I think it's worth talking about. I also wonder if we couldn't contact NFM and KBS and say, okay, here's the numbers, here are the numbers that we discussed last night. Do you want to revise your proposal?
Correct.
It's kind of what happened with us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the numbers were creleased and Dawn came back and without mentioning
So
I have
take it a
I
step.
have no problem doing any of the things that you asked, you know, for me to do. I
I think my question to them is if they were all around the same number, you know, within 100 grand or whatever number you want to pick, I mean, this is dramatic.
Yeah.
And, you know, the only choice is the first choice. And that's the one I'm least comfortable with.
I think the other two are always going to be a little higher no matter what, because they have to bring equipment.
Okay.
So they're going to have a capital cost that ABM doesn't have, because ABM paid that capital cost in their first year of these 2 years they're here.
But is it newer equipment? Does it help on man hours? Does it make life easier for their employees? I don't know. That's, you know.
KBS proposed some, you know, more
Innovative
innovative kind of stuff.
Correct. So for me, that's worth the move.
Yeah, additionally, to contact some of the other 6. Give them a crack at this as well.
Well, I think that's going to make it very difficult to.
This is the spot we're in.
But I'm comfortable with the process to date, that the work that you've done, Doug.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of, you know, winnowing it down and presenting these ones to us. I don't need to go back to it.
Message, Doug. Sorry.
That's okay, it's fine. Before we call MFM and KBS, do you think we should ask?
I think we need to consult with East Burning Gray.
Just to make sure, because I don't want to get anybody
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
in trouble then in turn.
Does this sound like it makes sense? And should we also talk to ABM about the idea of a potential one-year extension?
I think that's part of the call to East Vernon Gray.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, they can't.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I
think it's two-part question.
Yes.
Can we talk to ABM about a 1 year
Yeah.
at union rate? And two, can we speak to the others?
Yeah.
Legally?
And then I know there has
And to
to be
review the
specific
process.
language that allows the district to put this out to bid at some point if it's a one-year agreement, because we had a 3-year agreement, and part of the reason why we didn't get out the bid earlier, and the timing is what it is because we had to wait to actually receive a formal 120-day notice before we really could go out to bid, or otherwise we would have been in legal trouble for trying to bid something that we were under contract for with someone else without them giving us documentation that they were going to shoot out early. So that 120, as soon as it came, the notice came, then we went out to bid, but the timing was
Right.
tough.
2 of your bidders had to, in a matter of days, revamp their numbers, where one of those top bidders had the ability to work on it for over 30 days. 30 to 60 days, depending upon what it is. And the other 2 were not afforded that same time. So I would definitely agree, I was thinking about it earlier, we need to have a call with East Vernon Gray to review this, to help us make a step forward, review this process, have them involved, because they are
They are aware.
Yeah.
So I did talk to East Vernon Gray, certainly before I went out and said, hey, go ahead and give me your proposals based on union rates. And they were absolutely, they said, you have that right, it's a professional service. In fact, it's the group that you already interviewed, so I feel comfortable with that, it makes sense. And it's fair. So yes, I wouldn't have done that without seeking their advice.
I just wanted to make one more clarification, but I don't mean we're going to extend the current contract because it's been terminated for convenience, but the fact that they are our current partner, extend that partnership for 1 year versus going out to an RFP for 3 years, because you've got new people who are investing money in capital capital investments to start the project. They need 3 years to recoup their money. ABM, if we agree to we have to agree to the terms of what they're doing, get a 1 year contract, but then let's do it right, if we're going to do this right. That's kind of my approach. I'm feeling comfortable.
I'm going to, once we get some clarification, and we can work on how it's going to land on the agenda for next week.
All right.
So we may have to do a motion on the fly at this point, or adjust accordingly to when we get closer.
And again, if we're going with none other than ABM, then the 940 days doesn't really.
We'll adjust on the fly.
Yeah.
I think tomorrow we have to talk to East Vernon Gray. And then the second part of that is, if we're okay to go to Mr. Hidalgo's point, the 1 year extension, we will have to see if ABM is interested in that.
Right.
Keep your phones on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to give the board a couple more agenda items, including this, so you guys can have it.
Public comment.
And then,
All right. Should we do?
I have two, I'm just gonna go from here.
Might go happen first.
Maybe snag me. what we have.
I would
Should we leave it open to public
start with the
comment?
district resident.
Okay. Any public comment? Ms. Long, would you like to speak?
Not tonight, only because I trust that, the discussion will come around this. It's very distinct.
Okay. How about my friend from,
Thank you. Yeah, with full respect.
I'm sorry, introduce your name and.
Chris Jones from ATS Custodial Services. And with full respect to the process, and your evaluations, I'm just here tonight because, we really like the opportunity to partner with Council Rock School District. Whether it's tomorrow, next week, or next year, we'll certainly be willing to give you a very good look at what you have going on. I think that your discussion tonight was spot on, I've been in this business for 25 years, and when things like this happen in this area, this region with this particular union and this particular company, you really have to look at, what's going on and understand all that. And, is this a site-specific agreement? Is it part of the master agreement that a company like ABM would have with 32 BJ? There's a lot of factors in play there. The numbers, the differentials between ABM and the other two firms there, that raises a red flag to me. It doesn't make sense. So, the capital equipment is certainly a factor, but they're going to depreciate that over the life of the contract, and that's a pretty small number. So, again, I think you guys really, made this, right on point, and look forward to very much.
Appreciate that, thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll just, any new board business, we don't do that, we'll just, meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.